Om Shanti. We are here, and this is the story of Bridge Koti, and this is the first place that Baba's family at that time, Omandli, arrived at in Mount Abu in 1950. And it had been very interesting because when they'd asked Baba, Didi Manmohini, Dada Anand Kishore, and a couple of others were part of the Recce team to come to India to find where to go to bring the whole family. And at that time, Baba said to them, find a place which is far from the eyes of the world. And secondly, a place where the whole family can be together under one roof. Because of course in Karachi, they were splintered into so many different houses. And so this was the place where they arrived at, the summer palace of the king Bharat of Bharatpur. And here we have actually the building that is now in Pandav Bhawan, and this seems to be the time that Hawai Mahal was being created, because later on it acquired the domes. But this is the view from the roadside. When you're walking to the village, then you look across and you can see Hawai Mahal, which means the Palace of Wind. And it was a very, very spacious place. And later on, Dadi Ji would climb up the stairs right to the top of the domes, and she would then hoist the flag for Shiv Baba on Shivratri. And Didi Ji would be waiting at the bottom of the stairs for us to give us Shivratri Toli. So Hawai Mahal has again been Baba's direct inspiration. Sakar Baba wanted it to be visible from the road with Shiv Baba's flag hoisted there. When they came to Mount Abu, very soon after that, they were invited to go to Japan for a religious conference. Dadi Prakash Mani, Dadi Ratan Mohini, and also Dada Anand Kishore. They were all part of that delegation. And you're seeing the two sisters here with the abbot of the monastery where they had gone and the other religious leaders. And I'm not seeing Dada Anand Kishore, but you'll see him later on in some of the other photos. It was the start of world service. The sun rises in the east, and so it was absolutely right that the first step of world service should have been in Japan. And so Baba, the sun, began to share his light and love from the east at that time at the religious conference. And you can imagine the impact that the sisters in white saris had on everyone. And here you see Dada Anand Kishore with two very young dadis, Dadi Prakash Mani on the right and Dadi Ratan Mohini on the left. And you can see the young girls that they were. They must have been just in their early 20s at that time. And so a time of revealing Baba on the world stage, that was just beginning. And of course today, the organization that had hosted the Brahma Kumaris is still around, and the people who now run that organization are very still much in contact with us, and so they're friends for Baba. And so wherever the dadis have gone, it's been an eternal connection, an imperishable connection of love and respect. And the people there today still remember them with great, great love. Their descendants, because the original people have passed on, of course. And here again you see a very young Anand Kishore Dada in Western clothes here, but the two dadis, as ever, young and sparkling and sharing Baba's light of knowledge and Baba's light of love with everyone. So it's a lovely scene, a lovely reminder, and you can see how much everybody is just simply a little family at this point. I think the main delegates have gone, but the sisters were asked to stay on, and so here they are, a little family. We are now in Pandav Bhavan, and Baba, of course, center stage, but you can see Dadi Chandramani a young Dadi Chandramani on the right-hand side. And Mama is there with Baba, by the side of Baba. The little girl is standing between them. And Dadi Chandramani, again, a very young one, without glasses here. And she must have brought this group from Punjab. Delhi, Punjab were being served right from the very beginning. And so souls were beginning to emerge. Many of those who became teachers that were holding the fort in Punjab emerged from this period of time in the 50s. It's a powerful lioness, Baba called Chandramani Dadi, the lioness of Punjab. And there were challenging times that came, not just at the beginning, but later on too. And here we see Baba and Mama with Sarla Didi on the left. And between Baba and Mama, we see a young Sundari Ben. And these two were with Dadi Janki in Pune at that time. This would have been in the early 60s. And both Sarla Didi and Sundari Ben were Kumaris whom Dadi Janki had trained. And both were in Pune in those days, it seems. And at the right, you can see Nimmu Ben, Sarla Didi's sister, and others with her from Bombay. I think they must have been waiting their turn for a photograph with Mama and Baba. But the foundation of Pune, Dadi Janki, of course, but then it was Sundari Ben who took over and expanded the whole services throughout Maharashtra in a very, very big way. She left a little while ago. And here brothers enjoying badminton with Baba right in the front on the left-hand side. You can see Baba taking a big stride, and Baba has probably just hit the shuttlecock across the net. And this is also where I played badminton with Baba. But at that time, they didn't have a net up because it was monsoons. And so it was just impromptu. And this is round the back side. To the right is the garden and the hut there. And to the left, that's the road that leads up to the dining room now. The small dining room, and then further up the bigger dining room. So that space was very spacious at that time, and you can see Baba having fun with the brothers, and the brothers also, of course, really enjoying. You can see it from their faces, even at a distance. So Baba very active. And this is the space where we now have the Tower of Peace, and you can see on the right-hand side the windows and the corridor that's adjoining History Hall, and the terrace on the top, big terrace, and the papaya trees, many, many papaya trees. And so that big space where later on Indraprasth was built. And to the left-hand side, you can't see it here, but the construction of the training center had just started around November 1968. So this must have been a little earlier than that, but Baba took great pride in the trees and would walk around and see what the trees were doing, how they were doing, and the mangoes and the papayas and everything there. Baba held me by the hand to show me all the trees in 1966. Here, construction work going on, and Baba carrying things. And I think it must have been a machine for producing concrete, and the concrete was being carried in the bowls that one of them you see, two of them you see being carried on the heads of the brothers. And Baba serving there, he's probably manning the machine that's rotating to mix the concrete. And just behind, I think it's Sankri Dadi, who was Baba's Brahmani for some time. Lachu Dadi also, but she came a little bit later, but prior to that it was Sankri Dadi. And so Baba very happy to be engaged with the children and the laborers. I'm sure it's a combination of both here. And so working hard and inspiring and enthusiasm, and creating that enthusiasm. This is the door that opened out into the courtyard that leads to Baba's room. And you can see Baba's room door just behind the main door, and then to the side, on the right-hand side, was a tiny, tiny little kitchen where Baba's meals were cooked, which were meals for a baby, tiny little meals. But in that courtyard was a place where Baba gave me drishti and gave me a new birth. And now, of course, that space is covered, and that's where we keep our shoes and everything before we enter Baba's room. But you can see that there's been a lot of renovation happening since the 60s. But this was a photograph from the mid-60s, I would say. And that little window at that back, again, just a little bit of light there. This is now 21st January 1969, from Baba's room. The body has been brought out so that everybody had been able to pay their respects, and then they paused just for a few minutes outside Baba's room before the body was taken onto the vehicle that was going to carry Baba's body through the whole of Mount Abu, because Shiv Baba's instructions had been, let everybody have a glimpse of the lucky chariot so no one complains that I didn't get a chance to see the lucky chariot. And so the body was then taken onto the truck and taken through the whole village. At that time, Mount Abu was a village, not a town even, and people were standing to give their respects and regards. Some were offering petals. And here we are now in that courtyard where we have the Tower of Peace. That's exactly the place where the cremation happened. And it was the first time I had seen a cremation. And when I saw the pyre of logs that had been loaded on, it was a little bit scary, but I knew that Baba was flying up above. And the first person to light the pyre was Dadi Prakashmani. Again, this was an instruction from Shiv Baba, because Baba's Lokik son Narayan was there, Baba's Alokik son Jagdish Bhai was there, but Shiv Baba asked for Dadi Prakashmani to light the pyre instead of one of the others, because Dadi was to be the son, the heir, who would carry Baba's legacy right the way through into 2007. And this was built very, very quickly, soon after the ceremonies. It still took a few months, I think, but you can see it was a very basic structure of the Tower of Peace. And then there have been many embellishments after that. The canopy later on, the marble floor later on, the ring around that area where we now sit for meditation very often. Again, all these were later additions. And you can see the training section, and the training section was actually still under construction, not yet complete. And it was completed by April. And at that time, then the first Kumari's training happened, which I attended, together with Chandruben, who's now in San Francisco, and several others who are now serving across the world. And so this was the door to Baba's room, but at this point, at the moment, closed. But you can see everything very basic, very simple, and Baba wanted it that way. Baba had had the history hall built, but Baba wanted to continue to stay in that very, very simple stable. It was a stable, so it was a stable's room, a tiny little room where Baba and Shiv Baba stayed together. And Brahman Baba did tapasya from 2 o'clock in the morning very often, and they would see the red light on in Baba's room at that time. And this is also where Baba himself did the cooking. And by cooking, I don't mean physical food, but he would spend time in the early morning hours reflecting with Baba on Baba's Gyan. Meditation hall was constructed in the early 80s, and so until around, by the time it was the end of the 70s, the numbers had grown and we were too many to fit into the history hall, and by now we needed the meditation hall, and so this was constructed at that time. And you can see that this is a time when the bougainvillea hasn't yet been planted, and so Madhuban Moiniben was the one who had an eye for the gardens and had this vision of the whole hall being surrounded by flowers, and so the bougainvillea came with her inspiration, and of course you can see that now it's a very different scene, but this was at that time the meditation hall, which was our largest hall for the gathering. Baba would come in this hall, so history hall 250 max on the floor, and here many more. And here you have Dadi Prakashmani, Rosi Bhen of Chennai, and Didi Manmoini. So this would have been again about the same time as the establishment of the meditation hall. We still don't have the bougainvillea plants, but we have the laundry hanging up there on that terrace. And so Rosi Bhen had been with Baba in Sakar days, and she's here brought a group from Chennai. And I'm sure some of the Chennai brothers and sisters would recognize themselves. And I think I'm seeing Ambika Ben just behind Dadi Prakashmani. But this was a time when both Dadi and Didi were able to spend time with the groups that were coming and give a huge amount of sustenance. And the favorite place for photographs was here, because then you have the meditation hall in the background. And here you see the photograph of Baba's home, Pandav Bhavan, on the right-hand side, the rooms by the history hall where Dadi Prakashmani stayed. At the back you see Hawaii Mahal, the Palace of Winds with the 2 domes that have now been installed, and to the left you see the outline of Shashiben's office, and beyond that the buildings there. So this is the view from the road where we usually drive up to Pandav Bhavan. And the palm trees have been nature's gift to Mount Abu, so we have these beautiful date palms everywhere. A photograph taken from Hawaii Mel to give a view of the complex, and so you see one of the palaces, of summer palaces of the kings in the background, in the hills and the greenery, and you see the offices and the visitors' room, and then the old cottage. You can see from the roofing that it was very basic, very simple. So Madhuban in its very, very simple days, it gives us an idea of how basic life was at that time. That place where Shashiben's offices, behind that you see further buildings where Raju Bhai used to do the Murli printing and so on. That place was called Aeroplane. It was up above. And here we are in the hut, and Didi, Manmoini, Dadi Prakashmani, Vedanti Ben there, and also Lachu Dadi by the picture of Baba, and some of the other original sisters of Pandav Bhavan just behind them. I think I spot Dadi Shantamani right in the corner on the left-hand side. You can see the focus and the concentration capacity of the Dadis. Really, really total focus and just absolutely merged in that love. The Dadis had amazing drishti, which you've experienced now through the legacy of love, I think. But truly very powerful. Again, another view, probably also from Hawaii Mahal. And you see on the right-hand side, the rooms where the Nirab Bhai's office, etc. are today. And here on the left-hand side, you see the rooms in which we had the history hall and also Dadi Gulzar's room just at the back of that. But still, we're in that time of simplicity where everything was as it used to be in Sakar Baba's days. We've moved with the times and a lot of renovation has happened, but here you can capture that feeling of the tapasya that happened in the early days. And here outside Baba's room and Baba's office, meeting the folk from the village and giving them toli. And you see Dadi Brijindra on the left-hand side. Next to her is Didi Manmoini and then Dadi Prakashmani. And the village children and their mothers receiving toli and gifts from Didi and Dadi. There's been a lot of sustenance of the village people in one way or another. And a lot of the people who come to work in the bhavans, all of them are from the village, of course, and so on special occasions, 18th January, Diwali, Holi, all of them get special treats. And Dadi continued the system the whole of the time that she was there, and others continued after that. This is probably a scene of the 18th of January. And you can see Baba's children from abroad there. You can see from their hairstyles that there were some of Baba's children from abroad, some brothers, and also some sisters, but also people from Bharat. And so we would gather around the Tower of Peace, and this still happens today. But of course, over the years, the decoration of flowers has become more and more elaborate. By then, here you see the canopy has already been created, and probably also the boundary wall of Tower of Peace. And many, many of Baba's children from everywhere. And Didi is still there. Didi and Dadi, you can see them towards the right-hand side. From another one of the roofs, and now you're seeing Hawaii Mahal in the background. It might be the rainy season. It looks very, very cloudy, and the hills in the background, and again one of the summer palaces in the background there. And it might actually be while it's still raining, because everything seems, the courtyard, if you look in the bottom right-hand side, the courtyard seems to be very, very wet. So that's where the history hall is. And then across where the greenery stops, then the place where there's a travel office now. And at that time, there was just a covering on the top of a veranda, and we used to sit and cut veggies there. But now the travel office. This is now 1971 in June. And the first delegation, you see Dadi Ratan Moini's mother, Devi Mata, standing to the left, and next to her there's Jagdish Pai, Dr. Niramla, Sister Rosie, Dadi Sheelindra, and Ramesh Pai right to the back. He's the tallest, so they put him to the back because beside Dadi Sheelindra is Dadi Janki and then Dadi Brijendra, Baba's Lokik daughter-in-law. And down below, the younger ones, Brij Shanta Dadi and Ratan Moini Dadi. And then on the other side, Nimu Ben and Nalni Ben, and then two other young ones in the middle that I don't know. And actually between Rosie Ben and Sheelindra Dadi is Pushpa Shanta Dadi, the one who is the instrument for the global hospital. So this is the delegation of 5, Ramesh Pai, Rosie Ben, Dr. Niramla, Sheelindra Dadi and Jagdish Pai. They are about to come to London, and we were excitedly waiting at the other end for them to arrive, and Baba sent them with blessings that they should actually establish centres abroad. And their visit meant that the first centre was established in London in October after they'd gone, but they'd planted the seed. And then across the other side of the world, about the same time, it was when Hong Kong started also. And so everyone sharing their blessings. Dada Anand Kishore is there, Nirvay Bhai is there, and that may be Dada Narayan between Rosie. I think it is Dada Narayan because he's just behind Rosie Ben's Lokik father. So a very lovely scene, a real historical picture. And here we are in Peace Park, before Peace Park became, how do I put it? It became a proper garden later, but here it was just an empty playground with just mango trees at the back. And Dadi Prakash Mani managing a cricket bat very, very well. And little Mohini behind her watching the stumps. And it's playtime with the double foreigners. I'm sure Didi and Dadi also played a lot with the Bharatvasis, and they have their very sweet memories of that, but many of us have very sweet memories of games played with Didi and Dadi. So this would have been maybe end of 70s, early 80s. Didi left us in 83, so I'm sure she was the one, the other side. You can't see her in the picture, but she was probably throwing the ball. Dadi's still in playful mood and now playing ball. And maybe some of you recognize yourselves in this photograph. One I do. Right at the edge on the left-hand side is Chandruben, now in San Francisco. And you can see the cows at the back, so it was a pretty wide open space. It hadn't been cultivated into gardens. That happened much, much later. So the cows would come to feed off the trees also. Not much grass around because it's Rajasthan and it's dry and it's quite hot probably, but it's probably around February, March, because it seems to be sunny, but still a little bit cool. So we always used to go in February, March, and later on we started to go in October also. More fun and games in the park with Dadi Ji, Sister Mohini, Sister Sudesh, and I think it's Dr. Binarasi who's just behind Mohini Ben there. And I think also it may be Brother Nirvay in dark glasses at the back. So Dadi's having fun playing music. It takes very deep breaths to be able to blow on a trumpet, and but I think Dadi's trying hard. Good entertainment and fun for all. This was Dadiji's speciality. Very profound, very serious, deeply understanding, but also ready for fun, ready for games and entertainment. And she'd be the first one up dancing. She'd be the one who was making music and playing games. So this is a very typical instrument that they use in temples. It's like two pieces of steel, and they've got bells on either side. So when you put the two things together, it's a lovely jangly noise, but it's music, and it was used in the temples with the chanting. And so Dadi, I think, is showing everyone this thing. Sudesh Pen by her side, Denise Pen just behind her, and maybe you recognize yourselves in this photograph also. So, still in the playground. Peace Park was a playground first, and then later it became the place that we know now. But really lovely, lovely times. And the amazing thing was, because the Dadis knew how to let go and become kids, everybody else became children too. And so we enjoyed many games, many walks. And so here the Pandav Shakti army marching. Lachu Dadi right in front, and then Ishu Dadi, Moini Ben, Dadi Ji, myself, and somebody else there. But then the next, I think, is Bhavna Ben from New Zealand, I think. So, and yes, you see Bhopal Bhai behind Mohini Ben, and I think that's Golak Bhai on the left-hand side. So, whoever Madhuban Nivasis were free, they would come and join us also. So it was a lovely time to be in a light, happy atmosphere of Sangam Yug with the Dadis. Ishu Dadi young, Lachu Dadi very young, and striding ahead in front of everyone. And Dadi Kumarka making a way across the rocks. This is the construction time for Om Shanti Bhavan. Om Shanti Bhavan was completed in 1983, and we had the inauguration in February with the Dalai Lama coming on a private visit, and then the Assistant Secretary General of the UN, Robert Mueller, coming. And the first time that Brahma Kumaris reached the headlines in all the Indian press, because a UN official, especially of that caliber, coming all the way from New York for an NGO was a very new story for India. And so here the team with the contractor, I think that is Jitu Bhai, but I'm not so sure. But all the workers very proudly surveying what has been accomplished so far. And they're just about to be creating the steps. I'm not so sure which angle this is. I think it's at, yeah, it's still, I think towards the left is still the front of Om Shanti Bhavan. Yes, I've got it now. It's the front of Om Shanti Bhavan that's still under construction. And then the other side, the back, where still you have the hills and the rocks and mountains. The rocks that were there where Om Shanti Bhavan stands now were all lifted by Dadi Prakash Mani herself, together with an army of brothers and sisters, because every afternoon Dadi would go and say, whoever wants to come with me can come, and we'd all go and help her and support her. And so here you see Om Shanti Bhavan reaching completion. Not quite there, but almost there. Still the platform where I think they were still working at the front. But already you can see the sign Om Shanti Bhavan being carved into the earth there. The steps are ready and buses have started to come already. but it's still not 100% complete. How many times did Baba come in Om Shanti Bhavan? Very, very sweet meetings where Baba would be on the stage, and because the stage was so small in height and also in breadth and width, but Baba would feel very, very close. A gathering of sisters lifting the rocks to clear the path for Om Shanti Bhavan construction. So even before anything could happen, all the rocks had to be moved. Further restrictions on all of this has come later, and I see Shiluben there on the left-hand side. She was giving a hand at that time, and other sisters from Bharat. But this is what we would all do. When we would go to Madhuban, we would be clearing the land. The yoga power that's gone into these constructions is what gives them the atmosphere and the vibrations even today. So the power of love and everybody's pennies to make all this happen. The whole world cooperated and supported all the constructions that would happen in Madhuban. The whole world, together with Didi and Dadi Gulzar and Dadi Janki, Dadi Manohar, Mohini Ben. I see Rajni Ben from Japan by Mohini Ben's side. So I'm spotting sisters from across the world here, different countries represented. And I'm sure some of you seeing these photos are remembering yourselves and seeing yourselves in the photographs. Too many to mention, but see if you were there. I think you might well have been there. But you can see the lineup of the dadis, how many dadis we had at that time. And they all supported us and gave us so much of their time and love and attention. Dadi Janki arriving from somewhere, maybe London, I don't know, but she's arrived, and Dadiji is welcoming her and is bringing her to the meditation hall, I think. And it must have been a time when it was double foreign season, because together with the Bharatvasis, many double foreigners. And again, you can probably spot yourself. I spotted myself in this photo, but I'm sure you can too. So this would have been after 83 when Didiji had left. But this is in the Courtyard in Pandav Bhawan. Very, very famous gathering place where we all still meet together. But the love of the dadis for each other, the joy. There's a space behind the main buildings in Pandav Bhawan, where if you go up the stairs towards where Swadershan Bhavan is, then there you have this little garden. And it was a time for many sweet heart-to-heart conversations with the dadis. Can you count the number of dadis here? Just imagine so many of them. A beautiful rosary of dadis here. So it's Dadi Nurmashanta, Dadi Prakashmani, Dadi Janki, Dadi Chandramani, Dadi Gulzar, Ishu Dadi, Shantamani Dadi, Moini Ben, Dadi Manohar, Dadi Ratan Moini. All of them in Madhuban at the same time. So having heart-to-heart exchange. A very, very private little secluded garden where we would sometimes have picnics with the dadis. So the story continues.